All right, so I'm outside today working on my patio and fire pit. Yes, those videos are coming real soon. But first we wanted to go through this because I had to set up my saw today. We're doing some ledgestone work. That'll be in our other video. But I wanted to just take a minute because I've been collecting some tiles over the last couple weeks, just so that I can do a video where I can show you all the tips and tricks for cutting ceramic versus porcelain versus ledgestone versus glass versus this stuff, which is 1-inch thick structural porcelain. It is crazy tough. Now, I've got some basic tools here. I got a lot of advice, and I think I'm gonna be able to help you navigate which tools it is that you need to buy for your situation. So we're gonna dive into this, the world of how to cut stone and tile. That way, at least you have all the tips and tricks, and you're not gonna disappoint yourself by using the wrong tool for the wrong job, okay? A lot of times, like let's just take glass for example, it's a very difficult material to work with. If you're not using a wet saw, you're going to be disappointed every single time. Don't go into that rabbit hole of, oh, that's not bad or that's good enough. It's never good enough. It'll always look like junk and everyone's going to call you out on it. All right, so rent the tool if you have to, but never cut glass unless you're using the right tool. If you don't believe me, I'm going to demonstrate right now. Here's a few other different options that you have for cutting glass. So a lot of people will go out and they'll buy one of these. Now this is really getting old and it's not been maintained well, but it still functions great and has a nice wheel. And it's a scratch tool. And the basic idea of a scratch tool is you scratch your stone, put pressure on it, and you break it. And that looks like it did a pretty decent job. Actually did a really decent job. It's not supposed to do a good job. The thing about a scratch tool, and I'll do another couple more here on this other different type of stone here. Here we go. That's more indicative of it, okay? You see the top of that tile? This glass, while it's being broken, 9 out of 10 times will shatter, okay? And sometimes just the backside will tear off and shatter, but look at the back line. How straight is that? Now I'm going to tell you right now, because it's glass, when you put that on a wall and you add your grout and you put a piece of trim here, all right, the light is going to shine through the glass and reflect differently after the grout is done, and all of your edges will then look horrible, okay? When you cut it with the wet saw, you get a nice clean edge and a straight back, okay? So, the question is, well, what else can I use to cut glass, right? Can I use my nippers? Good question, let's find out. Let's say we're doing a backsplash, you gotta cut around your electrical. Nope, that don't work. So now you don't need to bother trying that. What if I use my grinder? Maybe. Let's have a peek. I know a lot of you were watching while I was cutting, and yeah, you saw that. The grinder, it had a sudden action. It didn't cut through. Just the weight of the grinder sitting on that glass and broke it up. Now, the edges also have a different contour. You see there's polished and then there's rough glass. Even if you get it to cut clean, it's gonna be nasty and you're gonna see it on your cuts. The only other technique you can use is you can cut this stuff upside down. All right, so now, you probably see it really well here. Now you can see the glass itself has actually changed its texture and its contour, and the light deflects differently. Doesn't matter which tool you use in this situation. Glass can only be cut with a wet saw. Now, if you've hired somebody to come into your house and do work on your tile, and he doesn't have a wet saw to cut your glass on, I'm not going to tell you what to do with that contractor, but I'm going to suggest maybe you send them back to the store to rent the proper tool. Ay, ay, ay. All right? There's just no such thing as, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be good enough. Just use the right tool. Now, moving on from glass. The history of tile, we used to have really small tile, okay, subway tile or 4x4s. And back in those days, generally speaking, guys could use this tool right here. It's a tile nipper, all right? And with ceramic especially, because it was nice and soft, and that was kind of the material of choice. Now, is this a ceramic or porcelain? That's a porcelain. That one's a ceramic. By the way, porcelain will always say porcelain on the tile. 9 times out of 10 anyway. This one's made in Spain. This is definitely a ceramic. I'm going to just show you. If I'm installing this and I'm going to say, here, let's say I have a shower valve and I need to cut a circle here in this tile. Okay? Can't use the straight tool, can't use a wet saw, you can use nips. And so what they would do is they would get over here and they would start cutting away at the tile. A little bit at a time. Okay? And I know this is almost ridiculous, but if you're putting in a bathroom and you have one shower valve and a toilet, a tub spout, and then a shower spout, and you're putting in ceramic, this is all you need. And a lot of ceramic isn't even that thick. This is actually designed to be a floor tile. And you'll see, with a little bit of practice, you can get pretty proficient with this. Right up to your line. And the secret is, the more material you put in your nipper, the more it's gonna cut. So you can get real precise. Like if I'm only putting in just the tip here, you see that okay, Max?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I can do detail work on this. Now, that's about as good a cut as you're ever gonna need, all right? I know that almost sounds crazy, but if you get proficient with this tool, 15 bucks, you can buy ceramic and you can cut everything. The only thing you can't get is a decent straight cut, right? When you get to the ceiling or your outside corners. If you're dealing with just ceramic and you're a DIYer, if you have nippers for your rounds and a tool like this, then you can do just about anything. You get a nice straight scratch, and then you put the pedal, okay, keep the wheel off the edge of the tile, and you just simply press down on the handle and up on the bars, and it'll break. That's it. Okay, there's your straight edge. Then you can put your plastic edging or your metal edging up, and it'll look amazing. Generally speaking, in the old days, everything was 4x4, then it went up to 6x6, ooh, then it was 12x12, right? No problem. This tile does all of that. But as soon as we got into 12x24, now this tool was limited. Because I can't do that long line with this machine. And what you'll see is when you're out there shopping, they sell this tool in 24, 36, 4 feet, 6 feet. It gets into some pretty good dollars, okay? And for a DIYer, if you want to go with a 12x24 and you've got to do this cut, you might find out that renting a tool like this from the Home Depot might be a good solution for you. So let me just do a little bit of a recap. If you're doing glass, you got to have a wet saw, okay? If you're doing ceramic, you can use nippers and you can use a scratch tool. And yes, you can even rent the longer scratch tool for the 12x24. And the higher quality of the material that you're working with, the better it'll cut, okay? But if you want to be guaranteed that when you cut, it's going to be perfect, because a scratch tool has a certain flaw rate on it. Usually about 1 out of every 6 or 7 cuts, you're going to get a broken corner, okay? To guarantee a good result, you can get the wet saw for the ceramic as well. Not a problem. Remember, the bigger the stone, the bigger the tool, okay? Now, as soon as we move into porcelains, we got to throw these out. No good. You can't use nippers with porcelain. You can still use a scratch tool with porcelain though, however, all right? I'll show you that. Now this is a porcelain, and this is a wall tile. This is not a floor tile. You might find that a floor tile will be a little bit more difficult to maneuver. Okay, takes a lot more force, and this is gonna see this. This is not uncommon, uneven cuts, all right? So if you're using a porcelain and you want to use one of these scratch tools, good for the floor because you're still going to be using base trim and everything else. Probably not a great idea for doing wall tile, all right? So if you're going to use porcelain on the wall, you're going to upgrade to the wet saw. You will see that there's a significant difference in the thickness, okay? This is a porcelain. All these are porcelain, but they come in different thicknesses, okay? wall tile, floor tile, outdoor structural floor tile. Now, you'll see that there's a sliding scale. The larger the material, the better tools you're going to need. So considering what your tool access is when you're planning out your renovation can be the key to success. If you don't have a lot of tools and you want to keep it simple, go with subway tile for your bathroom. Piece of cake. You can get ceramic subway tile, grab the nippers and a $30 cutting tool like this, and you'll be off to the races. And these tools will last more than 2 bathrooms and a kitchen backsplash, no problem. As soon as you get into floor tile though, you gotta upgrade your tools. Now, we're gonna show you my favorite tool for cutting stone, and here's why. This one tool can cut everything except glass. This will cut every single situation you're gonna need to cut. I'm gonna show you all the different demonstrations. It's a grinder with a porcelain blade, all right? And it doesn't just do tile, it does even more than that. So we'll talk about that too, but let's just show some demonstrations here real quick, how to cut. All right, so just before I go showing you how to use a grinder to do cutting, I wanted to just talk about the difference between porcelain and ceramic, because other than the price, okay, ceramic is gonna be a lower cost. And the reason is it's softer. On a hardness scale, ceramics are 1 or 2, porcelains are 3s to 5s, okay? And the scale is out of 5. So what you're gonna have to realize is the harder the material you're cutting, the better the tool you're gonna need. Even a scratch tool on a floor tile out of porcelain, it can be a lot of effort, okay? And it might drive you crazy and be just too much work. Go ahead and rent the tools, all right? Or if you're smart, like I teach, make sure grinder is one of their 5 tools that you own. And if you haven't seen that video, we'll put a link in the video description. Gotta check this out. This tool is so versatile, it'll blow your mind. It's not something most people think about out of the gate, but after today, you'll realize how valuable this is. Ceramic has a crazy expansion and contraction rate. Let's face it, we've all seen a brand new house, right? You walk in the front door, especially in the northern climates, and the ceramic tile's there. And what do 90% of these floors all have in common? They all have a cracked tile right where the heat register is. Because in the wintertime, the cold air is blowing in and the hot air is blowing in, and the tile shatters. It just can't handle that expansion and contraction system going on. With porcelain, it doesn't have the same dramatic expansion and contraction. And they do manufacture what's called rectified porcelain. That particular material is used outside. It's also getting really popular now that they're making the tiles larger and larger and larger. One of the things the industry is trying to get away from is having so much expansion and contraction that the tiles delaminate from the substrate. And so they're going bigger rectified stone so things don't move so much. And again, those products are extremely hard, okay? So when you're at the store shopping, you're going, oh honey, look at the ceramic, great deal. Also easy to cut. The porcelain's nice, it's a little more expensive, and you're gonna need better tools. Yes, and you're gonna need special cement and even better tools again. So consider all of those different graduating costs and experiences. You might wanna stay away from a really expensive stone if you don't have a lot of experience installing it until you've done some more basic projects. Now, here's my weapon of choice. This particular tool can cut anything, anytime, anywhere, inside, outside. It's the one thing that you can cut all the time, except for glass, okay? You still can't cut glass with this grinder. I mean, I've seen guys try and get away with it, but it just never seems to work out. Now, I'm gonna show you a couple of different cutting techniques, okay? First of all, let's say, we'll go through a bunch of scenarios and we'll show you how the grinder works. Let's say I need an outlet for a wall plug, okay? There's my square. Now, I'm not gonna cut the little notch for where the screw goes because I buy special plugs. And if you haven't seen that video, we'll put a video link in the description about the special plugs that you need when you're using tile so you don't have to do the extra notching. It almost always will end in a disaster because people just don't know how to measure properly. All right, so step 1, you're gonna cut through from the top surface until the blade, which is round, gets to the corners, okay? We'll do that on all 4 sides, and then I'll show you step 2. Okay, so step one, I'm really just drawing a line with the grinder on the surface. Okay, I'm getting through the glaze, I'm defining the space, but I'm cutting all the way through on the long sides. All right, here's why. The secret here now is if I'm looking at the tile, I can see this line and I line up the blade underneath, okay? Visually, I can see the top of the tile and where the blade is. And what I'm just gonna do a quick mark in the stone. So now you can see my line's all defined, all right? I got all these lines. So now I'll plunge through from the backside. Hey, I got it right. Oh, and now the secret here is to finish the cut from the backside, okay, until all the material is removed without coming through the surface on the front. This is not as hard as it looks. All right, and that's how you can cut a perfect square in a piece of tile, okay? Great system to have. It's all about patience and understanding the round blade and cut from both sides. Be patient, take your time, and anybody can do this. All right, and for everybody who wants to know what the blade is, here it is, boom. Now, it has a rating on the back. This is Pearl, they have their own ratings, okay? They have another level of grinder blade. I'm telling you right now, you probably never need it. I love the level 4. It cuts everything I've ever had to deal with. Imagining that maybe if you were using granite, you'd have to go to number 5. That's about it, okay? So if you need it, you can look around. If you live in Ottawa, you can get this at Dragona, my favorite tile supply store. All right, shout out to the boys over at Dragona. And if you have any need for anything to do with materials for flooring, you can go there. They sell underpads and carpet tack strips and all the different cements and base trims and even pails. All right, cool. So let's get on with the next thing. The grinder. It can also cut circles. Yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this before. I'm sure there's a couple of guys on YouTube who've cut a circle in a tile. Okay. Now just a note for everybody out there who has to cut tile for your toilet. The existing flange is 7 inches round, okay? And if you measure, let's say you're here, all right, and let's say this is your toilet flange. And if you measure to the middle of the flange, okay, from 2 different directions, you can translate that information onto your tile. Put that little dot on your tile. There's your center mark. Maybe a big dot. You can see it on the camera. Okay. And then take one of your leftover blades from your skill saw. This is a great trade tip. All right, done. This blade is 7 1/4 inches. Now, if you don't walk around with an extra toilet flange on you, that'll make a perfect hole. It's just a little bit wider than the toilet, which is fine, because most toilets, when they sit on the base, even if they have a really narrow base, will extend out about 3/4 of an inch on each side. You're not dealing with a lot of room here. So as a homeowner, if you're cutting a hole in your floor, resist the temptation, just cut the tile in half and then do a big square notch, because you're gonna have a hole in your floor. Learn how to use your grinder instead, all right? First thing you wanna do is you wanna cut through the glaze of the stone, okay? And get that out of the way so that the glaze isn't chipping around, because glaze chips, they'll actually cut your skin, all right? I'm not going to tell you that your circle has to be perfect, but it has to be bigger than the flange, just a little bit, because whenever you measure and you set it in, most people make a mistake with the grout line. They forget to add or subtract it when they're measuring, all right? And so by cutting it just a little bit bigger, it gives you that flexibility to put the tile in with confidence the first time, and you don't have to go back and forth and cut over and over and over again. Now the secret when you're cutting tile is this. If you cut with the grinder straight, as you're making your turns, you're gonna make your hole really wide. And you'll end up with an 8-inch hole, and then you're gonna have a problem. You don't wanna have an 8-inch hole, okay? It's just way too big. Now, when you're grinding, you wanna use the face of the grinder blade, not this cutting edge. You'll see when they design this thing, the actual cutting surface is what, about 3/8 of an inch, front and back, okay? And you can cut off the side too. If you cut your stone and it's a little bit crooked and you wanna fix it, you don't have to cut it like this. You can put an angle on it by cutting off the side. So you understand how the tool works, and it gives you a lot more flexibility. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut this now. We're gonna cut it almost flat. You know, we use that little edge that I put in there as the guide. And then what you're gonna end up doing is cutting on a bit of an angle all around that hole so that the surface of the hole is the perfect size and there won't be any material in the way. Now you'll see when I'm cutting this way, I'm actually cutting the material off from the inside of the stone, right here. So the groove is getting wider, but the outside perimeter of the cut is not getting any bigger. And that's the secret. That's how you maintain control of what you're doing. So full disclosure, this was done with porcelain tile, and it's pretty hard, all right? Here's my tile. Now, let's see how close I was to my original dimension. Wow, perfect. All right, now you'll notice I cheated a little bit when I got near the end. Instead of going on the angle, I was able to stand the blade up and just cut through, all right? And again, if you have any issues here, watch what I'll show you. You can clean all this up real easy off the side of the blade. I'm just saying, I know it takes a few minutes, but you only have one toilet in the room, I would think. So, that's pretty darn effective, huh? All right, now, we've been able to cut perfect rectangles, perfect circles. Of course, it's just way too easy, right? If you have to cut off a corner of a tile, then using the grinder is a piece of cake. And I know everybody wants to see this, so I'm gonna show you right now. What about cutting this stuff right here, right? It just so happens I need a piece that is about 6 inches long by about 3 inches. So one of the ways you can cut, and I love using markers on tile when I'm cutting. The pencil sometimes is just, you know, not good, and when you're on the wet saw, having a marker is great. Just make sure you don't put too much mark on there. Some of these materials, like if you have a glaze, the marker will rub right off, but this doesn't have a glaze, so you gotta be somewhat careful. So I'm gonna show you now, and we're cutting on a 1/2-inch piece of plywood as my backer, and I'll show you how to cut this really thick stone with the same grinder. Now I'm just going to tell you my process here so you can watch as the tool works. I'm not pushing into the stone, and that's the key. The tool weighs about 1.5 pounds. Let the blade do the work under its own weight, okay? Just set it where you want it to go and let it bury itself, and then pick it up and move it forward. Now if you got to be that precise, you can. You can just use the blade to clean out the inside corner. Piece of cake. And there we go. And then the other question is, well, what about the big stone? What about the straight cut? Because I don't even have the ability to use a wet saw on that, right? Okay. All right, so I've got 2 marks. I can actually take another one of these 40-pound stones. And you want to be the glaze side up, okay? Very key. And you'll notice in a minute why. And I can just line up the marks and use the tile as the straight edge. You don't need to use a marker or a pencil or anything. Use the grinder to create your line. What we're going to do is we're going to, instead of going flush, which would risk damaging the edge here, I'll just go on a 5-degree angle, and I'll run that across and create my pencil line with the grinder. Now I can remove my stone. Now, of course, the more experience you have with this sort of thing, easier it is. That actually makes a really nice line, doesn't it, on the camera? Now, don't go running away just yet. I know you're tempted to because, oh, you think you've seen it all. But here's the deal. I've got a couple other different cutting techniques to show you. I'm going to show you how to cut your ledgestone, right? And for everybody who's wondering, you know, why don't you just use a drill bit to make a hole? You can. They do sell some really good drill bits nowadays, made for porcelain and ceramic. The harder the stone you're using though, the better quality bit you gotta buy. A good quality bit to cut through porcelain for a shower head hole, for instance, is gonna run you almost $100, all right? So consider that. I know, you might wanna get the bigger flange and cut a square. That's what I do, works every time. Now here we go. Here's my porcelain, there's my straight line. I know it's straight because rectified porcelain always comes straight. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically just freehand this and let the groove that's there guide the tool. My job is to keep it perpendicular, okay? And then you'll see that in my blade, it actually comes to a point. So the first scratch line is actually really thin. After 2 more quick passes, it'll get wider, all right? So it's very important that you consider that when you're doing your measuring. Let the blade do the work. Don't push, don't pull. Straight as an arrow. Now when you start considering which tool is the best for the job, you might be leaning this direction. This wet saw here was actually a good deal. It's just a couple $100, right? It performs really well. The table moves, but it has this edge to keep things square. I can't set a 2-foot tile on here. It won't fit. Even if I do, like, yeah, right? Is that really the way that you want to be cutting? And then all the way to the end? These wet saws generally will do the job, but they're not as flexible. If you get into 2 or 3 foot stone, it's just too big for the table, all right? This is a great tool up to a 24 by 24, but I'm not using it on these patio stones. It's just too much material, and it's just gonna chew through that blade way too fast. To get the same quality blade for a saw like this as a grinder, it cost me like $250. And I wasn't interested in spending that kind of money on a blade when I knew that the grinder was going to do the job just fine. It takes a couple more minutes, but I don't have a lot of cuts to do on a patio. Now let's get the wet saw back on, and I'm going to show you how to cut your outside corner. Because this is not that tricky. All we do on this saw is we have this adjustable blade height. okay? And I lift this up so that I can cut on that angle, all right? And you'll see that by the time I have an obstruction, I'm all the way over here, I can just take that stone and turn it around the other way. Piece of cake. Now there's one more trick I wanted to show you, because when I started out in tile, I had a small little yellow table because I was doing ceramic, and it worked great. And it's a combination of this tool plus the nippers. And I was able to cut just about anything with that, and I'm going to show you how that works right now. It's called the piano key cut. All right, here we go. There we go. That's cut. And we could just take a piece of old tile. Oh, glass, not a good idea. All right. And break all the keys. And then we'd take the nips and finish off the line. Okay. And you know what? For the most part, that works pretty darn good. Now, if you need an economical way to cut around floor grates and that sort of thing, then that works, okay? You can have one saw set up and you can cut all your porcelain like that, and you don't have to use the grinder. That's another way to do those inside corners, all right? Listen, if any of this information was helpful, make sure you like the video, share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't, because we've got a lot of videos coming down the way, especially dealing with this patio, guys. It's gonna be amazing. How to make an outdoor living space, outdoor fire pit, dining room table. These videos are all coming real soon, so don't miss out. Hit the subscribe button and notify with the bell so that you get told when those videos are coming out. And if you'd like to see some of our other videos that we make, we got a bench series. And in that bench series, I'm going to share with you industry tips and tricks about one subject matter and overload you with information to help you be the best contractor you can be. See you soon.